Hi, good evening, and welcome to tonight's Gather. This is the ninth edition of ASU Kerr's Gather. I am Abigail Brammer-Fouts, and I was previously a storyteller in this series, so it's an honor to be asked back to host. And quick tidbit, I actually got married at the Care Center, so it's nice to be back here in regular clothes and not a very restricted wedding dress. A little bit about me. I'm the Director of Compliance for the Jewish Family and Children's Service, which is a nonprofit that focuses on delivering behavioral health and primary care services to our community in the Valley. I am the proud dog mom of two dogs. One's 13 and his name's Marley, and he's a beautiful lab. And the other is Otis, and he's 7, and he is a beautiful boxer. They are the lights of my life, along with my husband, Justin. And let's see, I moved down here from Utah in 2018 after my husband and I graduated law school, and we have loved it down here. We have loved the heat. We were tired of the snow, and we love the culture down here, and it's been really amazing to be enveloped into all of it. ASU Kerr started the Gather series with the idea that everybody can be a storyteller and that everyone has a story to tell. These programs feature storytellers from all levels, from beginners like me to experienced storytellers who have graced many stages. We have an incredible set of all Arizona-based guests, and we are so proud to be able to shine the light on local residents who are making an impact in their community. Tonight's theme is One of Us, and I am very excited to see and to listen to how each of our storytellers interpret that, and I hope you are too. Our 3 storytellers will tell their stories, and then there will be a question following their story. And at the end of the program, we will have a Q&A session. The Q&A is open to everybody who's watching this live. You can send us a question in the chat, and we ask that you send positive vibes, and we would love to hear from you. With that being said, I would love to introduce our first storyteller. Our first storyteller is Rosetta Walker. Rosetta resides in Tempe with her husband and her daughter and has been an Arizona resident for 25 years. She's a community volunteer, advocate, and influencer in the Native American community. As a recipient of the Phoenix Indian Center Volunteer of the Year Award, Rosetta is widely recognized as an activist with emphasis on education and support in the Native American arts community. She has volunteered with numerous nonprofits and state agencies, such as the Heard Museum, Native American Connections, the Phoenix Indian Center, the Pueblo Grande Museum, Indian Market, and many more. Rosetta was also a steadfast advocate at the Arizona legislature for House Bill 2570, which was the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Study Committee. She is a certified deputy registrar with the Maricopa County Elections Department in the community relations team. So she helps with assisting with voter registration and reaching out to the community. She's also a member of the Voices of Indigenous Voters group under the Morning Star Leaders LLC. Rosetta was elected to a 2-year term as a precinct committeeman in the Celaya precinct in Legislative District 18 in Tempe. With that, I'll turn the time over to Rosetta.
Thank you for that warm introduction there. I really appreciate being able to be on tonight's ASU Kerr storytelling episode. My name is Rosetta Walker, and I am here to share my story. And first off, I would like to say I am Sakangu Lakota from the Rosebud Sioux tribe in South Dakota, living here in Tempe, Arizona, speaking to you from the homelands of the Akmil and Pipash A'atam peoples of Arizona. It is an honor and privilege to share my story on the storytelling episode of Gather, topic One of Us. I walk into a room full of strangers, all eyes on me. I stand at the front of the room. Sometimes there is a podium, most of the time, not. I look out into the sea of people, and all I see is one of us. You see, I am speaking to an audience of court ordered attendees at a meeting of the Arizona chapter of Mothers Against Drunk Driving Victim Impact Panel. The men and women have been court ordered to attend this meeting, a condition of their release from jail or prison. The men and women sitting in the audience are fulfilling their judicial obligations ordered by a judge. I am here to share my story, sharing my personal DUI story, sharing how my choice to drink and drive affected my family, my friends, and professional relationships. I titled my PowerPoint that I make at this presentation, Choice, Consequence, Change. This is my way of healing, my way of giving back and letting others know this is not how my chapter ends. Sharing the pain, shame, embarrassment, and guilt is empowering. Letting others know that they can rise from the ashes, letting them know that they are the lucky ones. They are they are not in the hospital. Their families aren't identifying their body in the morgue. They are sitting in this room as one of us. You see, my story started after my release from prison. After my third DUI conviction in 2006, I was charged with aggravated DUI, an automatic class 4 felony, a conviction with a mandatory prison sentence, time ranging from 120 days to 3.5 years in the Arizona Department of Corrections. I was sentenced by Judge Scales to a term of 120 days in the Perryville Women's Prison. Some people say 120 days, piece of cake, but it was 120 days of my life. During that time, I missed my daughter's 18th birthday. I spent my 25th wedding anniversary incarcerated, and I spent my 52nd birthday in prison. I was a normal person, just like you. I had a good job, paid my taxes, owned my own home, had 2 cars in the garage. I held board positions on various nonprofits. I am a mother, a wife, and a productive member of society. I was not a bad person. I just made a very bad choice. This all changed when I chose to drink and drive. By the grace of God, none of my arrests involved any bodily injury or property damage, just me driving drunk. To make it clear, I don't use that as an excuse. It was my choice, my consequence. Being locked up is a true testament, true test of your faith. Being locked up is a true test of who you find out who your friends are. Being incarcerated tests the strength of your family. This life changing experience stretched beyond my imagination the trauma and grief I put my family through. I found that we were resilient when faced with the fire, and I am now stronger having been forged by the fire. When I share my story at a MAD presentation, it is because I am one of them. I share to empower, I share to give hope, I share to let people know this is not how the story ends. I share to let them know that you are in charge of your destiny. I met many wonderful women while in prison, wives of district attorneys, school teachers, mothers, daughters, and people like you and me, one of them, one of us. I'm not condoning this behavior. I am here to instill hope. There is time to make a change, and that time is now. Let this be a life lesson. The MAD staff and speakers are not here to point fingers, say that you should know better, or to tell you how to live your life. I help by providing names of organizations that will provide assistance to people coming out of incarceration. There are many nonprofits right here in the Valley that'll help you by getting your resume together, by hooking you up with employers that hire felons. We're considered hard to hire, so we get those connections made there with different nonprofits. I still had a long road to travel after my release, back to the real world, back to being employed, back to being a productive member of society, and I prevailed. We are here to educate and to assist in moving forward. Life lessons come in all forms. May this life lesson be helpful to you. I proudly celebrate my sobriety, August 13th, 2011.
Vulnerable and it's open, and it's just amazing what you've been able to do in response to such an event in your life. We wanted Rosetta to tell her story first because she included a land acknowledgement in her opening statement. And so, Rosetta, for those who don't know what a land acknowledgement is, could you explain it to us and also explain why it is important to do a land acknowledgement when holding events or doing a presentation?
Thank you for that question. I choose to do a land acknowledgement because it acknowledges the indigenous people that thrived and lived in this area, the Valley of the Sun, Tempe, Phoenix, Ahwatukee area, for thousands of years. These are the people that built the canals. These are the people that got the crops together, the corn, the beans, and the squash. And it's acknowledging them and their existence here on this land that we call now Phoenix, Scottsdale, Tempe. And it's important because as an indigenous person living here in the Valley, I want to honor them. We haven't disappeared. We're still here. We're still thriving. So to them, I give all honor.
Thank you so much. That was, again, a beautiful story. We are moving on to our second storyteller, and that is Sarah Tan. She is a Phoenix-based performing arts educator and facilitator. Originally from Singapore, Sarah moved to North America in 2012 to attend Carleton College, where she graduated with a bachelor's degree in theater arts with a concentration in educational studies. Then this May 2020, she graduated with the class of COVID, earning her MFA in theater for youth and community. So congrats on completing that. She is a certified trauma support specialist and trained arts integration education. Her primary research is in how creative spaces exist in digital platforms among youth. Other areas of interest in continued education include trauma-informed creative practice and JEDI in communities. As an educator and facilitator, Sarah has worked with age groups ranging from 4 to 5 to 62. These classes have included performance skills for stage and personal development, theory for film and theater, and critical analysis of artistic works. She is currently an education coordinator and digital communication specialist with Gray Box Collective, and is also continuing work as a teaching artist in the Valley and nationwide. And with that, we will turn the time over to Sarah.
Thank you so much, Abigail. Um, so I'm gonna change my screen and you're gonna see a little change, all right? But it's just gonna be there for a little while. And I know it's on my face, but bear with me. So behind me are the lyrics to the song Home by Kit Chan, a Singaporean artist who sang this song for our Independence Day. Ever since coming to the US, the idea of home for me has changed in many ways. That song, Kit Chan's about, says that home is a place where your dreams wait for you. And it's a place where you won't be alone. I came to America because I thought my dreams were here for me, but there were many surprises in store. Before I dive into my story, I'd like to invite you to participate in a simple activity with me. You can remain seated, standing, or lying down. Wherever you are, I'd like to invite you to place your feet on the ground. Or if you're lying down, you can be on your back. And you may close your eyes if you like. But as you continue to breathe, notice how the ground holds you up, how the ground supports your being, and how the ground helps you understand where you are in the present moment. If you close your eyes, you may now open them. That feeling you just experienced is how I often ground myself when I start to feel myself float away. When I forget who I am, what I am doing, and why I'm here. This August marked my 8th official year in North America. I came to the US from Singapore as a student in 2012, completed my undergraduate degree in Minnesota, freelanced for a year in Minneapolis, came to Arizona, completed my MFA, and now I'm here, sharing my story with all of you. In those years, I thought a lot about what home means. What does home mean to you? To your family? To your friend? That question of home became more and more difficult for me the longer I stayed in the US. And if you ask me now, I still wouldn't be able to confidently give you an answer, but I would like to try. Home is a physical location where I have a place to rest. Home is where my family resides. Home is where the heart is. Home is where I find joy. Home is where I can be myself. Home is where my dreams are. Home is a building. Home is a bed. Home is. What is home? At one point in time, I started understanding the idea of home as footprints. Home was where my body was, where my feet landed each day, the ground it stood upon, and the invisible tracks it left behind. When I tried to draw this out, and I did, home became a series of colorful footprints overlapping each other, moving from one end of the page to the other. Sometimes with great intention and other times not so much. It became a dance of sorts, a dance with joys, a lot of fears, leaps, and cautionary steps. When I went back to Singapore, my bedroom floor no longer felt as big. I used to dance and cartwheel and jump from one end of the room to the next. And now it just feels like a floor for me to walk across. My body is here, but I don't know where my heart and my mind are at. After coming to America, everything I seemed to know suddenly came into question. Math that I used to understand became foreign to me in Calc 2. Paper became shorter and wider. And there were rallies and gatherings, and I didn't know why they were happening. Everyone who thought they were woke thought my name was my real name. I know you are Sarah, but I want to call you by your real name. What? Well, you have a Chinese name, right? And it would take me forever to explain to them how both my English and my Chinese name were on my birth certificate. Sometimes I think they still didn't believe me. But now it's more of, your English is really good. While another American in the room tries to be helpful and goes, well, you all speak English in Singapore, right? Mm-hmm. But the one thing that confused me the most was suddenly being identified as a person of color. I had never been one before. In Singapore, the word color mostly refers to colors like red, blue, white, yellow, orange, purple, magenta, and so on. I never grew up talking about someone as a color. Well, I guess in elementary and kindergarten, we talked about how Chinese people were yellow, which was very confusing because I didn't think my skin looked yellow at all. But oh well. It took me a long time, but I finally understood the historical and political significance of the term, especially as we expand it now to BIPOC. But did I feel conflicted and confused then? Yes. How was I expected to exist in that identity as someone who wasn't American? My childhood feet did not grow up standing on American land. My feet did not run through the halls of the American education system. But now my adult feet are here, grounded and supported by the ancestors of this land, American land. So, where am I now? Am I home? Truly, I don't know the answer to that question, and it still scares me. Because how do I feel pure joy, acceptance, and family in a culture that was not mine? How do I chase after my dreams when I'm restricted by legal structures? So, home right now feels most like acceptance. And this is what acceptance looks like. Acceptance looks like breathing. Acceptance looks like peace. Acceptance looks like compassion to myself. Acceptance looks like being kind to myself about the parts of myself that I don't like. Acceptance feels like an out of body experience where I can see all the good and all the bad. Acceptance feels like a place to find a home. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Sarah. I think that that is a lesson that people continue to learn all the time. And my question for you is, you work with children, young children, and how do you help them learn how to get to acceptance in their own bodies, how to be, as you kind of put it, comfortable at home, recognizing that where your feet stand is home? How do you get them to, or help them understand that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I can tie it back to my own experience as a dancer. So I was a dance. I took ballet till I was 9, and then I quit, and I was like, I don't like the way this makes my body feel. And then in undergrad, I started modern dance, and it really was my professor then who told us and taught us that the way your body moved is the way the dance is gonna be, right? We weren't trying to fit in a mold. I wasn't the dancer that trained since I was 5. So I believe in bringing that to the young people I teach, which is one of the reasons why I love teaching the performing arts. And one of the ways I do it is by allowing them to know that they are free to move in a space that doesn't have the same rules as a school, where they might have to sit down at desks and chairs and raise their hands if they want to talk. And hopefully through the unlearning of those structures, they'll be able to realize that they are celebrated in their bodies and the way they look and the way they move.
Thank you for that. And with that, we are moving to our last speaker of the night. Our final storyteller tonight is Pete Salaz. Pete is a house music DJ, producer, club owner, restaurant owner, event promoter, uncle, friend, Chen style Tai Chi practitioner, Peruvian plant medicine retreat organizer. He's a mentor, a supporter of Arizona Latino artists and culture, and a third generation Phoenix resident. His weekly house music Saturday night event, which I'm sure many of you have heard, is called Solstice. And he kicked that off in 2007. And it's still going strong. It is the longest running weekly club event in the country, showcasing local, national, and international talent. And even during COVID, they are live streaming, so make sure you check them out. He has co-owned the venue since 2010. In 2011, he became the co-owner of the downtown nightlife staple, the Monarch Theater. And in 2017, he became co-owner of Centrico Cocina Mexicana, located in the ground level of the historic Hotel San Carlo. Pete is often credited as being the godfather of Phoenix house music, as his underground Chuba and Red Monkey parties in the late 90s and in the 2000s were some of Arizona's seminal electronic music events. He started his university education at the ASU engineering program and then ultimately switched to science education. He has been a follower of the Tao and Chen style Tai Chi for over 18 years and has been facilitating visionary Peruvian plant medicine retreats since 2017. And with that, we would like to introduce you to Pete.
Thank you so much for that lovely intro. Want to start off by saying my real name is Pete Salaz Castañeda Jr. I know most people know me as Pete Salaz, and that's because when I was doing radio, they couldn't pronounce my last name very well. So I just went with my first name and middle name. So most people do know me as Pete Salaz. There are two parts to my story. The first part is how I came to the story that I want to tell. And the second part is the actual story. So please allow me a little bit of leeway into trying to tie it all into the theme of one of us. But before I begin, I just want to say thank you. It's an honor to speak here at Gather. But truth be told, I'm a bit of an introvert. Yeah, I know I've DJ'd for over 36 plus years, but you know, the DJ booth offers some sort of security for me. It's like a safety blanket, if you will, and to speak to an unknown audience and be open to questions afterwards. Well, that's a little bit being vulnerable. But in a way, I kind of like being vulnerable because I know that's where a lot of healing takes place. Um, so I went back to the original email just to make sure I grasped the concept and understood the instructions. And expanding upon the instructions, Stacy Bailey, the person who invited me to speak, wrote, and I paraphrase, that rather than telling a story from an extracted and expected niche, maybe you can somehow tell a story from another part of your never-ending depth of your identity, and possibly make it catharsis. Well, that kind of sat with me, catharsis. Sure, I have many stories that I want to tell, but truth be told, for weeks after, I was having a hard time trying to decide on what story I could tell that would offer some sort of catharsis as well as tie into one of us. And it wasn't until I went on a recent hike with my nephew just to kind of clear my head that it dawned on me that I actually said one of us in a recent conversation. But telling this story won't differentiate me in any way. In fact, it will solidify how alike I am to everyone else. I wanted to tell a story that would, as Stacy eloquently suggested, showcase a never-ending depth of my identity, but everyone knows this story, or at least will. And so no way does this offer some sort of uniqueness into who I am. And the story is about the death of a loved one. On September 20th, only a few months ago, my brother, Alejandro, or as I call him, Hondo, died. He was 50 years old. My brother suffered for about 7 years. He fought a good fight, and although we had always known that death was on knocking at his door, he somehow would always pull back, and he would surprise us. You know, he would always get really low, but he would always pull out. Heck, he was on life support for 4 days one time, but it wasn't his time. Ultimately, my brother succumbed to heart failure, but really what it was a long battle of diabetes, which led to gastroparesis and led to kidney failure and a whole slew of other ailments that attributed to his not so quality ideal life. So a few months had passed and I went to visit my younger brother, my only remaining brother, Renee, and I went to visit him. I wanted to see his new house. We ordered pizza and wings. We watched a football game, and it was great. It was just him and I. But eventually, we got to the elephant in the room, and we talked about our brother's death. And I wanted to see how he was doing and talk about how I was doing. And I told him what I was feeling was hard to describe. That felt like I lost an appendage, but not of my body, more so of my soul. Felt like I had a room in my heart with the lights and the heat off. You know, I've already said goodbye to both parents and all four grandparents. They all left in the twilight portion of their life. Not that it made it any easier to cope with, but to lose a sibling who, for all intents and purposes, the same age as me, well, that digs in differently. That hurts. So I turned to my brother Renee and I said, one of us is gone. So here on Gather, I'd like to pay homage to one of us, my brother Hondo, who on September 20th, 2020, transitioned into the great unknown. Hondo, you fought a long battle of many ailments, but that's not how I'm going to remember you by. I'm going to remember you as a teammate on the baseball field when we were kids all the way up through high school. I'm gonna remember you sleeping on the top bunk and me kicking the bottom of your mattress to annoy you for whatever reason on many, many nights. You know, I'm gonna remember that blue little bike that you would jump ramps on. I'm gonna remember fighting you for the pillow to cover our butts every time Dad wanted to spank us. And I'm gonna remember getting up early Saturday and Sunday mornings and going around and cutting the neighbor's lawn to raise money for Atari cartridges. I'm gonna remember you for being one of my security guards at some of the earliest parties that I threw. You know, and I'm also gonna remember our fights, which I believe toughened us up for life. You know, we were each other's greatest teacher and greatest students. Many times I made you laugh and cry, and many times you made me laugh and cry. And, you know, we were competitors in many things and we were unified in many things. We were each other's catalyst for life lessons. So for that, I thank you. You leave behind 3 great children who I love very much, and I vow to you that I'll always watch over them. So enjoy your newfound freedom, little brother. I love you. And forever you will be one of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. I'm sorry I'm tearing up. Your story is one of so much just openness, and also just, it's so beautiful. It really is. So thank you for being open and sharing that with us. And I think that, you know, this year has just been a great year of loss, and everybody searches for catharsis in their own way. And that's one word I wanted to kind of hone in on that you used, catharsis. Do you believe that you found or are closer to achieving some catharsis while preparing the story and thinking about what you wanted to speak about?
Well, obviously the healing is still taking place, even as I was coming up and trying to craft my story. Many times I would choke up, and I promised myself that I wouldn't tear up or well up to it. But obviously that's not easy to do because I'm still feeling it. So yeah, it's almost like this project, this class assignment. It sort of feels like in helping me in the grieving process. It's, you know, you're right, with COVID going on and so many things going on in my life, which is no different than anyone else. I almost forgot that I had to grieve. You know, everybody has to go through that process, and it takes time. Everybody's different. And so yeah, this storytelling event has been cathartic for me, and will continue to be so.
Thank you for sharing that, Pete. And I'm so sorry for your loss. And
Thank you.
again, thank you for sharing that story with all of us. And on that touching moment, we are going to move into the Q&A. This is a section where you, the audience, get to ask your questions to our storytellers. So you can use the chat boxes, and I'm going to read questions as they come in. And so the first question I want to ask is a panel question for all of our storytellers. And that is, what challenges did you face in getting your story together, of creating your story? Maybe one or two things that really stuck out to you while you were preparing.
I can start. I think for me the challenge is something that my professor also talked to me about when I was researching my own like behavior, is that like thinking about how much I want to share with the public while, without putting myself in a place where I will get criticized for things that I'm not ready to be confronted by yet. So that's one of the things that I was thinking a lot about in terms of like which parts of me I want to share and how. And then also thinking about the theme, one of us, and like feeling like that idea felt like us sometimes seems like an us versus them. But I know that, which is not always the case. But I knew that with this story, I wanted to try and find a theme that a lot of people could relate to, especially now that we're all like in a heightened state of stress.
Thank you. Pete, Rosetta, would you like to chime in?
Pete, you want to go next?
Sure, I'll go. Well, the challenge that I faced was just finding something that I could really identify with the theme, one of us. And as I stated in the story, I was having a hard time. I couldn't find anything until it actually did dawn on me that I said it. And then once I kind of knew my direction, it was, not, I knew that I was going to pre-write my story, but I didn't want it to come off contrived, and I really wanted it to be from the heart. And so, especially because who knows when I'll ever get a chance to participate in something as grand as this, so I really wanted to make it count. And honoring my brother was, I think, a beautiful thing for me. And obviously, we all go through familiar family loss. So hopefully it can, resonate with other people too. But I think just for me, the challenge was actually coming up with the subject matter until it actually just fell on me like a ton of bricks that I actually said that one of us.
Yeah. Excellent. Rosetta?
I have been sharing my personal DUI story with Mothers Against Drunk Driving and on other platforms throughout the state since May of 2012. And I do this because each and every one of us has been affected by DUI. I can walk into any room and somebody will have either lost a person to somebody to DUI, tragic death, or incarceration, or themselves having been arrested for DUI. So it's a subject that people don't want to talk about because it's painful, it's shameful, it's embarrassing. But it's like getting a traffic ticket sometimes. It's like people don't want to talk about it, but sometimes it needs to be talked about because it's a part of healing. When we have trauma in our lives, sometimes the best way to start healing from that trauma is to talk about it. And that's why I choose to share monthly. My biggest audience has been over 300 plus people at a conference that I was invited to be a keynote speaker. And it is those audiences that walk away knowing that, they have a chance to change a life too, because they've been impacted somehow, some way, some or another. We've all been impacted, and it's just how we learn from that impact and how we carry ourselves forward is our choice to heal. So we're all in this together, and we're all healing at some point.
Thank you for that, Rosetta. And I will be fielding the first storyteller specific question your way. So as you just mentioned, you have a choice when you're faced with a decision to speak about it and to, be an agent of change. So this is kind of an audience question from Tracy. They're wondering how you found the courage to step in front of the mic the first couple of times when you were telling your DUI story. And I imagine it involved a lot of self-introspection and self-reflection. But could you elaborate and answer Tracy's question?
The first time I was sitting in a MAD class as a paying participant, a paying attendee, was in February of 2012. And mind you, I got released from prison in December of 2011. And I was court ordered to attend a MAD class. I was on probation for 3 years, and I was also court ordered to attend drug and alcohol treatment. So I had gone to my MAD class in February, and I sat in that room and listened to the heart-wrenching stories of people whose lives were upended tragically by people like me who chose to drink and drive. And that impacted me to the point where it's like, I looked around that room, I'm sitting in that room with, 185 people. We've all been convicted of that crime of DUI, drunk or drug driving. And I thought, if I can share my story, I can help to make a difference, because each and every one of us that are sitting there, we've paid our money, we're, abiding by the judge's order. If I can just reach one person, then I feel I've fulfilled a duty, that I can make a difference. And the first time I spoke was in May of 2012. So that's only 3 months from the time I sat in that room till the time I was standing in front of the room. And it was awful. It was horrible. I really wasn't prepared for it. And my daughter went with me, and I basically spoke for about 2 minutes, and then I just broke down. And she came up beside me and put her arm around me and held my hand. And it was with her strength that I got through the next 20 minutes. But that's a testament to know that we're making an impact, and that my family is behind me 110%, and that we have to make a difference, because we're the only ones who can do it if we've been impacted. So thank you for the question. And as you can tell, it's still a little more emotional, 9 years going into it. It's still tough some days.
Thank you for sharing that. And this next question is for everybody, so feel free to chime in when you're ready. From the audience, May Ann is wondering how has the year 2020 changed your work and what you do? If anyone wants to take a stab at that.
All right, I'll chime in. What 2020 has definitely put a lot of challenges out there for me is every weekend I could typically be found on the rooftop DJing and promoting and meeting people and sharing my story via music. And, it's been taken away. And now everything is online, and it took us a while to even, get that going. Um, but what it has done for me, um, has it sort of changed my game plan, and having to be at home all the time. Well, now I'm producing more, and creating music rather than playing the music out to people. So hopefully when this all lifts, I'll have a whole new arsenal of my own music that I'll get to play, um, and like that. But I think it's also really like anyone else. I have a feeling that, it really made me appreciate my family, um, and the support that I have. Being around them all the time at first, it was almost like you're getting to know each person in the family, and we had our trials and tribulations with each member, but I think in the long run, 2020, you know, so many things we can say bad about it, but I'm a firm believer that there's always silver linings, the whole yin and yang. Wherever there's darkness, there's light, So I do believe that a lot of good will come out of 2020. And for me, artistically, um, man, I just can't wait to get back on that rooftop again and start, pumping those beats out again. And I'll never take that for granted. I don't think I ever did, but this gives a whole new perspective on it, and being with people. And it's really, it's really hammered in how humans just, are social, so I miss that social aspect, even though I introduced myself as a little bit of an introvert. It's something I'm working on. And so 2020 for me will be definitely yin and yang, some good and some bad.
Thanks, Pete. Rosetta, Sarah, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I can jump in. Um, I'm definitely more of an extrovert, but I know like Pete was talking about how like there's the safety barrier with the DJ set. Like even though I'm an extrovert, like I don't need to talk to people all the time, and that's something I definitely miss. Is just like sitting in a coffee shop and being around people without having the pressure of having to have a conversation with every single person. Um, but how 2020's affected my work. It was really odd and confusing at the start because I came straight out from grad school, so I came from having a schedule and no full-time job to being in supposed to be entering a world where I get hired to feeling like a state of limbo where I have to stay at home, and figure out what to do when my profession is in performing live. Um, so I definitely took a step back and I didn't perform live as much because my brain was shutting down, and the idea of having to perform live for a camera just didn't feel right for me. It sounded stressful. So I shifted a lot into doing more behind the scenes admin stuff, which is how I started doing a lot of work with Graybox, with like the education department, and creating classes that we were hoping would be useful to people. And then I went back into drawing, and we released, me and the artistic director, we worked together and we released like a coloring book. And like, I never thought I would release a coloring book, but it's super exciting. Um, the benefits that I am seeing though is that I have had the opportunity to teach so many virtual classes. It's definitely been a struggle with a lot of them getting canceled. I've had a lot of classes canceled because there just weren't enough students to register. They are getting screened out as well. Um, like Zoom burnout. But now like I'm teaching one class is in Maryland, and like I'm having opportunity to teach another class in New York. That's going to be a one-off in spring. And I'm like, if COVID didn't happen, I would not even have that opportunity available to me. So plus and minuses. Definitely still a little bit of a freelance hustle.
For me, for the MAD presentations, we suspended all of our monthly meetings for 7 months. And then when we finally went back to the in-person meetings, it was scaled down considerably in order to comply with COVID protocols and safety practices in place for both the speakers and the attendees. So I went from an audience of close to 200 to 12 people that actually were sitting in the audience. So, you have to adjust your impact there, because not only are the people in that room going to have to take your message, but to me, I felt like I had to be more impactful. But a lot of the classes being much smaller, that's fine, that's dandy. I will deal with that. But on a personal level, outside of my speaking performances, is that I loved being at home. I loved not getting, felt like I had to be somewhere, felt like I had to participate in a meeting. I was really relishing the fact that I got to just be at home. I love being at home now, and people say, well, hey, come on, meet us. It's like, no, I don't want to go out. It's like, I like being at home. I like being, a mother and a wife. And so now I really got to look at different things that I was spending a lot of time on, giving a lot of time in different volunteer activities with different nonprofits. And I really scaled back considerable. I scaled back on different boards that I sat on, because I got to look at, well, what am I getting out of it finally? It's like, am I getting anything out of it, or am I just being, I hate to say it, but am I the token Indian sitting on your all non, Indian board there? And so it gave me a chance to really pull back, reassess, realign, and reground. Your activity that you use, Sarah, with placing your feet on the ground, it's true. You really have to get grounded. And this is, in my eyes and my point of view only, is that this is a really good time for people to get grounded. Reassess, realign, relearn where you're putting your energies, because there are a lot of energy suckers, a lot of toxic things and relationships that we get ourselves into. And now that we're all pulled back from that, we're regrounding ourselves. So I loved it. And, I will still stay at home. Going into 2021, I think I will still stay at home.
Oh, it does. I agree with you. This time has prompted, I think, more people than not to do kind of a self audit, and see, realign some priorities, and also helped us take on the challenge. Because for me, sometimes it's a challenge of, almost self-care, trying to place myself in a situation where I feel whole, and so that was a really good perspective. And like you said, Sarah's grounding exercise that she had us do during her story really helps with that. And Sarah, we do have a specific question for you, and it's from Katya. So she asks, Sarah, now living in the USA, do you feel like the culture of divisiveness has made you to feel now as a woman of color, or are you still free of those labels from your identity? If you want to take a stab at that one, that would be great.
Yeah. I definitely I would take on the label women of color, especially in the US, because I also understand it's like how people are seeing you, right? And it's how people are seeing you, and what my physical presence shows in the space, right? I can't undo that thinking. Just if I don't think of myself as a person of color, doesn't mean that someone else in the room doesn't, right? Because my exterior shows that. So I don't feel like it's something that I can hide away from. But I definitely feel it shift as I go back home, right? Because Singapore predominant race is Chinese. So then I suddenly become the majority there, and it's very odd to like move between those spaces. But in terms of taking on that identity, I would say yes, and acknowledge that there are also a lot of experiences that I am privileged to maybe not have experienced because I didn't grow up here. In terms of like the way people were treated in school, what their childhood was like. Mine was very different. So I think it's like it's a mixed bag.
Thank you for that, Sarah. Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag. And again, in that same vein of self-introspection, it really makes you think. And now we are going to have a general question for all the panelists from the audience, because they are coming up with some really good questions. So I'm going to keep pulling from them. Marlene wants to know, on the other side of storytelling, what show, movie, or podcast do you all recommend we binge next?
I can go. A show that I really like is Kim's Convenience on Netflix. When I like it. Yeah, my sister introduced it to me, and like it took me a while, but my cousin kept going on about how he's watched it so many times. But it's a comedy, and it's by a Canadian production team, and they deal with like the political lingo of today, and with a family whose parents are immigrants, so they don't understand it, and moving through that whole thing, but through comedy. It's great. Um, if you want to listen to a podcast on like trauma informed stuff, Gray Box just released their podcast, a podcast called Any Other Anythings. This is a weird like personal plug. But if you want to hear more about the stuff we do in terms of like grounding and how we include trauma informed practices into our work, like that'll be a nice like cozy one to listen to.
Well, for me, I don't usually watch a whole lot of TV, but with the COVID hitting, I think I've indulged in a few things, and the first series that I indulged in was Avatar: The Last Airbender. I actually missed it the first time around when it was on Nickelodeon, but when they released it on Netflix, I binged watched it, and I was really engulfed with the characters. There is a lot of Eastern philosophy, which I love, intertwined in the storyline. They use martial arts as a term in growth, not as martial arts to beat someone up, but it's in martial arts to control yourself and for your own growth. And I thought, wow, what a great teacher this series is. I wish every young kid could watch this. And I'm a grown adult, and I was watching these cartoon figures that are portrayed as 11, 12, 13 years old, and I was really sucked in by it. And then of course right after that, The Legend of Korra, which is the sequel to it, I the whole family got into it. So it was like our special exercise every night. We would watch 3 or 4 episodes, and if it wasn't for the kids having homework or something like that, we probably would have watched 6, 7 per night. But so I really liked Avatar and Korra. So that's what I would say.
That's perfect. And my husband, Justin, told me at the beginning of quarantine, he was like, I think you'd really like this show. And I was like, oh no, I missed the whole wave when I was younger. And then I started watching a couple minutes with him, and then I started watching all the episodes with him. And I was like, am I learning, me, a grown woman, how to be a better person from a cartoon? It was, and The Legend of Korra, both are just very progressive and very entertaining. So awesome choice. Rosetta, do you have one?
I like to listen to various podcasts that surround food sovereignty, uh, land back, water rights, things that affect us and our children that we'll have and our great grandchildren. And but aside from those really earthy podcasts, I hate to say it, but I'll say it straight out. I like watching shows like Air Disasters and Forensic Files, and Ancient Aliens is my all-time favorite. I have probably the whole slew of Ancient Alien episodes from season 1 to season 16, and I pick and choose, and I'll just love those shows.
Well, that is excellent. And I'm going to indulge myself a little bit for just a hot second. But as the host, I would recommend a podcast called Ear Hustle. It is an amazing podcast that um, comes out of San Quentin Penitentiary over in California. They talk with the inmates and just tell some amazing stories. And the two hosts, one's an inmate and the other is a local NPR reporter. So that's amazing. And kind of in the same vein of Kim's Convenience, I do like Schitt's Creek. It's amazing. I really took comfort in comedy this year, and I just rewatch it. And I know it came out with the last season, but I keep stopping because I don't want it to end. So I just rewatch numbers 1 through 5 over and over again. So highly recommend. And with that, we've actually come to the end of our time. This has been an amazing honor to come back as a host and to hear Sarah and Pete and Rosetta's stories. I mentioned to them earlier that each of their stories not only exhibited, a unique interpretation of one of us, but it also exhibited very deliberate choices, very deliberate moves in their lives that helped them become who they are now and will help them progress even further. And so I want to thank them again for being open and vulnerable and inviting and warm in telling your stories, because I'm sure as I'm looking at this live feed, it has really inspired a lot of people, all of your stories. And so thank you so much. And with that, we're going to wrap up this amazing edition of Gather. And I would also like to thank everybody who's tuning in right now and, really getting used to this new normal of all these live streams and virtual events. And thank you to ASU Kerr as well for adapting and still being able to bring us together as a community over stories. So thank you. Go on with the announcements. Excellent. So just a couple of post-show announcements. ASU Kerr will have their final live stream of 2020 tomorrow at 7 p.m. The Beam series will welcome Nicole Pesci Group featuring Renee Patrick, Diana Lee, and Greg Warner. Jazz and soul lovers would love to tune in to see what that live show is jiving about. Our first Gather event of 2021 will be Wednesday, January 27th at 6:30 p.m. We recommend that you subscribe to ASU Kerr's YouTube channel so that you'll never miss a show. ASU Kerr has been presenting free live stream programming since April and creating paid gigs for Arizona artists during a time of great hardship for the arts and music industries. If you're able to contribute even a small amount to ASU Kerr, you'll be helping a self-sustaining historic venue survive and create beautiful art events. So please visit asukerr.com and click the gold Give Now button to donate today. We appreciate everyone that made tonight's show happen and wish everybody a safe and healthy rest of the year. Thanks.